My name is Michael Andrews, and for as long as I can remember, I believed that a marriage was built on trust, honesty, and unwavering loyalty. I married Emily when we were young and hopeful, when the world seemed full of promise and every shared smile was a promise of forever. Our life together was filled with laughter, quiet evenings over dinner, and gentle moments of understanding that, I believed, would carry us through any storm. But sometimes, even the brightest smiles can hide a darkness that no one suspects. I learned this the hard way when I began to notice small cracks in our carefully maintained facade. At first, the signs were subtle. Emily, who had always been meticulous about her appearance, began to mention more frequently that she needed to see our local dentist, Dr. James Carter. Now, I trusted Dr. Carter implicitly. He was known throughout our small town as not only an excellent dentist but also a kind, compassionate man with a disarming smile. Routine checkups, whitening treatments, and even the occasional cleaning were normal parts of her self-care routine. I never gave these appointments a second thought. However, over the past several months, things had started to change. I noticed that when Emily mentioned her visits, her eyes would light up in a way that I hadn't seen before. There was an unexpected excitement in her voice, as if these appointments were more than just routine. They were moments of escape. At first, I convinced myself that she was simply proud of the care she was taking of her smile. But as time went on, I began to observe inconsistencies that made my heart ache with unease. One autumn evening, as the wind howled outside and rain tapped steadily against our windows, I was sitting in our living room preparing dinner when I overheard a snippet of a conversation on the phone. Emily's voice, usually soft and caring, had taken on a tone of eager excitement as she mentioned something about Dr. Carter's special attention and how his care went far beyond the standard procedures. I froze. The words were unexpected, and in that moment, an icy dread crept through me. What had once seemed like a harmless visit was now starting to feel sinister, a secret she was keeping hidden behind closed doors. I began paying closer attention to the details. Every time she left for an appointment, her expression seemed to shift. There was a spark in her eyes, a subtle curve of her lips that I hadn't seen in years. I found myself wondering if those moments of special attention were more than just professional courtesy. At dinner parties with friends, when Dr. Carter's name was mentioned in passing as the town's renowned dentist, I saw a flicker of something in Emily's eyes, an almost imperceptible smile, as if she were remembering something personal and private. The weight of my suspicions grew heavy. I tried to dismiss them as nothing more than my imagination running wild, but deep inside, I knew that something was off. I began to notice that Emily's demeanor was changing. Her laughter, once bright and full of genuine mirth, had become more reserved. There were moments when she would catch my gaze and quickly look away, leaving me with an unsettling feeling of being left out of a secret conversation. Curiosity turned into a quiet obsession. Late one night, unable to sleep, I began rummaging through our belongings in our shared study, a room filled with old photos, letters, and mementos of happier times, in an attempt to understand what might have shifted between us. That's when I discovered a small envelope tucked away behind a stack of old dental brochures. Inside were receipts, appointment cards, and even a scribbled note that mentioned extra care and special treatment. The items were innocuous on their own, but together they painted a picture that made my stomach twist in knots. I spent the rest of the night in a haze of disbelief and sorrow, rereading every detail until I could almost feel the weight of each word. The evidence, though circumstantial, was enough to make me wonder if Emily's visits to Dr. Carter were a cover for something far more dangerous, a secret that was chipping away at the foundation of our marriage. The next morning, I tried to act as if nothing had changed. I greeted Emily with the same warmth I always had, even though inside I was crumbling. Every look, every touch, began to carry a hidden meaning for me, a reminder that perhaps the smile I had cherished was now a mask concealing betrayal. I kept my discoveries to myself, torn between a desperate need to confront the truth and a paralyzing fear of losing her entirely. Days turned into weeks, and the subtle signals only grew stronger. Emily's excuses for her frequent dental visits became less plausible, and her evasiveness increased whenever I inquired about her treatments. I found myself replaying every conversation in my mind, trying to remember when I first noticed the change in her tone, the light in her eyes. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that this wasn't merely about dental care. There was an intimacy, a closeness, between her and Dr. Carter that no dentist-patient relationship should ever foster. I began to document every detail in a hidden journal, the dates of her appointments, the odd notes I'd find around the house, the way she behaved before and after these visits. Every entry deepened my sense of betrayal. I realized that my once blissful home was now tainted by secrets, and I was powerless to stop the slow, painful erosion of trust. That autumn, as the leaves turned from vibrant gold to somber brown, I stood at the precipice of a decision I never thought I'd have to make. Confrontation loomed like a storm on the horizon, a reckoning that would force both of us to face the truth. I knew that if I didn't speak up soon, the silence between us would widen into an abyss from which there might be no return. But fear held me captive, fear of what I might uncover, fear of losing the woman I loved beyond repair. I closed my journal that night with a heavy heart, knowing that the journey ahead would be one of agony and soul-searching. The smile that had once been our symbol of happiness now masked a secret betrayal that threatened to destroy everything. I lay awake, haunted by the image of Emily's beaming face after each visit, in the cold realization that my home was no longer a sanctuary but a stage for deception. I have no idea what tomorrow will bring, but I do know that the truth is like a slow poison, a poison that has already begun to seep into every corner of our lives. And as the first cracks in our perfect smile become undeniable, I brace myself for the inevitable confrontation that will force me to choose between clinging to the past or facing a future shrouded in uncertainty. The days following my discovery were a relentless battle against my own heart. Each morning, I woke with a sense of dread that grew heavier with every minute that passed. I tried to maintain the facade of a loving husband, but behind closed doors, I was consumed by a torrent of thoughts. I began meticulously reviewing every detail of Emily's routine. Every time she mentioned an appointment at Dr. Carter's office, I felt the familiar twist of anxiety and betrayal in my chest. I started to secretly record the dates, the times, and even the duration of her visits. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon more evidence, hidden in plain sight. One evening, while searching for a misplaced set of keys, I found a small stack of appointment cards tucked behind a book on our shelf. The cards bore dates, times, and even scribbled notes that hinted at something more than routine checkups. One card read, "Extra care appointment, feel special," and another said, "Looking forward to your gentle touch." I held the cards in my hand as if they were damning proof, and in that moment, the magnitude of the betrayal hit me like a tidal wave. Every piece of evidence confirmed what my heart had been slowly realizing. Emily's visits to Dr. Carter were not merely about maintaining dental health, they were secret rendezvous that carried an intimacy I could neither understand nor accept. I began to wonder how long this had been going on. Had it been weeks? Months? The unanswered question gnawed at me as I tried to piece together the timeline of her clandestine encounters. Late at night, I found myself scrolling through her text messages on her phone when she left it unattended. I came across a series of messages that chilled me to the bone, brief, playful exchanges that hinted at a private language shared between her and Dr. Carter. Their messages were filled with compliments, coded references to smiles and treatments, and an underlying tone of intimacy that made it clear that their relationship extended far beyond the sterile confines of a dental clinic. The realization was unbearable. I was being betrayed not only by the woman I had given my heart to, but also by a man I had once trusted, a man whose reputation was built on his skill and kindness. How could Dr. Carter, someone who was supposed to heal and care for his patients, use his position to lure my wife into a web of deceit? The irony was as bitter as it was undeniable. I spent countless hours in the solitude of our study, poring over every receipt, appointment card, and text message. With each piece of evidence, my heart sank further into despair. I began to document my findings in a hidden journal, scribbling down every detail so that I could confront the truth when the time came. I questioned everything, wondering if I had somehow been blind to the subtle changes, if I had failed to see the writing on the wall. But the evidence was irrefutable. The secret messages, the coded language, and the furtive behavior all pointed to one painful conclusion. My wife had been seduced by the allure of forbidden attention in a place where trust was meant to be sacred. In my sleepless nights, I replayed every moment, every conversation, trying to remember when I had first sensed something amiss. I recalled a particular afternoon when Emily returned from one of her appointments. She wore a smile that was too bright, too knowing, an expression that hinted at secrets she wasn't willing to share. Her laughter, once light and carefree, now seemed to hide layers of unspoken emotion. I began to see the subtle differences in the way she looked at me, the way her eyes would dart to the door whenever her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I felt isolated in my own home, a silent witness to a betrayal that I could neither fully grasp nor stop. Every corner of our house now seemed tainted by the memory of those stolen moments, moments that were meant for intimacy and connection but had been perverted into a playground for deception. I realized that I was living in a double life. On the surface, a husband who still loved his wife, and beneath it, a man whose heart was shattered by the knowledge that his trust had been exploited. As the days turned into an agonizing blur of suspicion and sorrow, I knew that the time to confront the truth was fast approaching. I began to prepare myself for the inevitable conversation with Emily, a conversation that I both dreaded and desperately needed. The hidden messages, the appointment cards, and the receipts were now more than just evidence. They were the building blocks of a confrontation that would force both of us to face the consequences of our actions. I have reached a crossroads, one where silence is no longer an option. The evidence has piled up like a mountain of secrets, and I can no longer live in the shadow of deception. Tomorrow, I will confront Emily, and with a heavy heart, demand the truth behind those furtive smiles and secret messages. I don't know what will come of it, whether our marriage can be saved or if the betrayal will tear us apart beyond repair. All I know is that the time for denial is over. The time to face the painful reality has arrived. The day of reckoning arrived on a cold, overcast morning. I woke with a heavy heart and a determination forged by weeks of silent suffering. I knew that if I didn't confront the truth, the lies and secrets would continue to corrode what little remained of our marriage. With trembling resolve, I sat across from Emily at our kitchen table, a place that had once been filled with laughter and shared dreams, now transformed into a stage for an inevitable showdown. "Emily," I began, my voice quivering but steady, "we need to talk." Her eyes widened in startled surprise, and for a long moment, the silence between us was deafening. I could feel the weight of every hidden secret in that pause. Finally, she lowered her gaze, and I continued, "I've noticed changes. Your frequent visits to Dr. Carter's office, the messages, the receipts. I know there's something you're not telling me." Her face, usually so open and kind, became a mask of anguish and regret. For a few agonizing minutes, she said nothing. The air in the room was thick with unspoken words and the looming shadow of betrayal. I pressed on. "I found appointment cards and texts. Emily, I know that there's more than just dental checkups going on. Please, I need the truth." Tears welled in her eyes as she took a shaky breath. "Michael, I never meant for you to find out this way," she stammered, her voice barely audible. In that moment, every shared memory, every moment of trust, collided with the painful reality of her actions. "Dr. Carter wasn't just my dentist," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I felt alone. You were busy, and sometimes I felt invisible. When I went to his office, it wasn't just about my teeth, it was about feeling seen, feeling cared for in a way I hadn't felt in a long time." I listened, my heart shattering with every word. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have ever imagined. "So it wasn't about dental care?" I asked bitterly. "It was about you looking for something that I couldn't give you?" Her eyes, full of sorrow, met mine, and I could see the conflict inside her, the desperate yearning for affection, the guilt that gnawed at her conscience, and the resignation that came from knowing she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Our conversation unfolded slowly, each word a wound. Emily explained that during her visits, Dr. Carter had shown her kindness and attention that she felt was missing from our daily life. His compliments about her smile, the gentle reassurance during procedures, and the small talk that turned into deeper conversations had all contributed to a connection that evolved over time. She admitted that, on more than one occasion, she had allowed herself to be seduced by the attention, even though she knew it was wrong. I felt a tumult of anger, disbelief, and sorrow. "How long?" I demanded softly, struggling to keep my voice steady. "How long have you been meeting him beyond your scheduled appointments?" She hesitated, tears streaming down her face as she finally whispered, "For several months." "I'm so sorry, Michael." In that moment, our kitchen became a battleground of emotions, a place where love, betrayal, and regret collided in a torrent of raw truth. Every accusation, every confession, left me reeling. I asked if she still loved me, if any part of her heart belonged to the marriage we had built. "I do love you," she pleaded between sobs, but I was so lost, so desperate for someone to notice me. Her words, though filled with remorse, could not erase the sting of betrayal. I felt as if the very foundation of our life together had crumbled beneath me. As the conversation dragged on, the full weight of the deception became apparent. Not only had Emily allowed herself to be seduced by the allure of attention in a place as intimate as a dental office, but she had also kept it hidden behind lies and half-truths. The pain of realizing that a trusted professional, someone who was supposed to help and heal, had exploited her vulnerability cut deeper than any physical injury could. I struggled to comprehend how our lives had been upended by something as seemingly mundane as dental appointments. By the time our confrontation drew to a close, both of us were left shattered and numb. The silence that followed was heavy with the realization that nothing could ever be the same. I walked away from that conversation feeling as if I had lost a part of myself, a part that had once believed in the sanctity of our vows. I knew that the road ahead would be long, filled with uncertainty, heartbreak, and the arduous task of piecing together a future from the fragments of a broken past. In the aftermath of that painful confrontation, our home transformed from a sanctuary into a maze of memories and heartache. Every room, every corner, was haunted by the echoes of what had been lost. I spent countless nights alone in the dark, grappling with the betrayal that had upended my world. The journey toward healing was shrouded in uncertainty, a path I never wished to tread, yet when I had no choice but to walk. I sought solace in therapy, determined to understand the depths of my own pain and to figure out how to rebuild a life that had been shattered by deception. Each session was a raw, unfiltered dive into the darkest corners of my heart, where I questioned not only Emily's actions but also my own shortcomings. I had always prided myself on being a devoted husband, yet I could no longer escape the feeling that I had failed to see the signs, the subtle changes that foretold of the betrayal. The journey was painful, and every step forward was accompanied by the sting of memories and the relentless echo of her secret visits. For her part, Emily was burdened with guilt and remorse. She continued to seek help, trying to untangle the web of emotions that had led her astray. There were moments when we would sit together, in the quiet of our living room, and talk about the past, the dreams we once shared, and the love that had, for a time, seemed unbreakable. Yet, every conversation was tainted by the painful knowledge of what had transpired in the sterile halls of Dr. Carter's office. The betrayal was a constant reminder of the fragility of trust, a truth I could neither forget nor forgive easily. Slowly, over many months, we began the painstaking process of rebuilding. It was not a grand reconciliation filled with sweeping gestures and dramatic declarations of love. Instead, it was a series of small, tentative steps, a shared cup of coffee in the morning, a quiet walk in the park, a moment of honest conversation that dared to glimpse at the possibility of forgiveness. I learned that healing was not about erasing the past, but about acknowledging the wounds and choosing to move forward despite them. Every day was a struggle, a battle between the desire to hold on to the hurt and the hope that one day, the pain might ease enough to let love flourish again. As time passed, I came to realize that the scars of betrayal, though deep, did not have to define my entire future. I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried under the weight of sorrow, old hobbies, friendships, and even the simple pleasure of a genuine smile. While the memory of those secret appointments and the betrayal in a place I once thought was purely about care still lingered, I slowly found ways to honor both the love we had shared and the pain that had changed us. Now, as I sit here reflecting on the long, arduous road I have traveled since that fateful day, I remain uncertain about what the future holds. I know that trust, once shattered, is never fully restored. It must be rebuilt with painstaking care and time. Yet, I hold on to a fragile hope that one day, the echoes of betrayal might be replaced by a new kind of understanding, a mature love that has weathered even the most devastating storms. This is my story, a story of betrayal in the most unexpected of places, where the promise of a perfect smile was tainted by secrets and deceit. It is a story of a marriage tested to its limits, of a heart broken by the very person who once promised to care for me. And though the journey toward healing has been long and fraught with sorrow, I still believe that there is hope for redemption, that even in the face of the most profound betrayal, the human spirit can find a way to smile again.